This is Disclosure Now with Arkheim and Brian Tseng, a show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today's guest is Christopher Jacobs. We will be diving down the rabbit hole of time travel, alternate realities, and the pantheon of gods of old, connecting our ancient past to our present and envisioning a brighter and better future. Join us for an absolutely fascinating conversation about our current place in the multiverse.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Disclosure Now with Arkheim and Brian Tseng. Today we have a very special guest, Christopher Jacobs from thelifting.net. A very multifaceted individual. To me, a pillar of this community. I met him at the Full Disclosure Now conference, and it's about time we have him on the show. And as usual, I'm just going to let you explain yourself, who you are, what you do, Jacob. Or Christopher, I feel like other people are usually better at explaining their own story than somebody else telling it for them. So why don't you just kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, you're not the first one to call me Jacob. I've had that happen plenty of times. So it's I've had Steven too. That's my middle name. So I've people.
Okay. Sorry about that.
What I usually do is people come to me to have attachments removed, curses removed, look into past lives, SSP memories, things of that nature, and anything that's holding them back energetically, like entities, things of that nature, or I help clear properties as well. And I've done that plenty of times in the past. Some things are fairly simple. Sometimes people make a mountain out of an anthill, but a lot of times I've run into an actual threat. So like demon types, also alien types, alien abductees come to me to see if I can get the aliens to stop doing things. And the most important thing is I showed them how to defend their home front pretty much a lot of times from this. And I get this from SSP times, I found out. So I get a lot of this from past life and SSP blips where I've tried to help people in those scenarios, and majority of those fractal memories stayed with me so I can conduct things properly here. And before I got hurt back in 2009, I was doing channeling and stuff before that. But in 2009, I got hit by a car, had a near-death experience, and then it took things into overdrive, and I started getting more of my SSP memories back as well. So at that point, and so I thought from that, I took that psionic capability and applied it to this area.
Can I give a testimony here?
Mm-hmm.
I did a consult with Christopher about a month ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of our consult where you did a scan and clearing of energy. And not only did you clear at least one negative attachment that I kind of had hovering on me, it felt that day, at least one or two nasty ones off of my wife. And the day later that day, things definitely cleared up. Like just in the energy it was noticeable. And she wasn't aware that we had done the conference and that you'd kind of done more of a household general clearing. It's been effective, and there's a lot of kind of like some misunderstanding that was just like ongoing. It was just like this weird miscommunication.
Mm-hmm.
And after that specific day, that disappeared.
That's interesting because a lot of these entities will cause that rub and miscommunications where you're just not hearing the other person correctly. They might have that within them. They might have it around them, but they like to cause miscommunications to get fights to start. So,
a thing that we're going to be doing in the near future here this Sunday, and I hadn't even talked to Brian about it yet, but basically I just decided, all right, time is now. I'm throwing out the invitation to people. I'm talking about separation programming and how we have in this community separation programming, and what they're doing to us right now is they're splitting us off into all these small enclaves of like echo chambers to where the information really isn't getting out further to where it's supposed to be. And I feel like that's like a super duper important aspect to these miscommunications and stuff that are happening. Is like there's probably entity attachments and like energetic things going on behind the scenes that are not so 3D level that we need to work with. So if you're available this Sunday, I would really love to have you be a part of that show.
I wish I could. I'm going to be gone as of tomorrow. I'm traveling, so going to a friend's wedding across the country. So I'm not going to be. Unfortunately, I can't.
Okay, well, maybe we can just touch upon that now, since you won't be able to be there for the show. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the programming that you were talking about, yeah, absolutely. I've run into that where there's a separation programming. Some people like to call that cognitive dissonance too. That's too broad of a term. It's like it's specific to where the person was put, like either SSP or some other program or something like that. I've run into that where I've run into other fellow SSP people where they've had certain protocols that they've come back with, and sometimes they will activate at a certain sound pitch, tone, energy, an altar will activate. I've run into this on numerous amount of occasions. Also, the separation programming, the powers that be out there have tried to do that to me and Joanna numerous times. So over the past 8 years or so. We've run into that. The more I've run into that, the more I've learned about those different protocols and the different layers of them. They've even had sleep protocols in there where if you try to hear something from somebody or that you try to explain something to somebody, they'll fall asleep on you, or they'll get really violent, or they'll get really like they'll just get that deer in headlights look. I've run into that all variations of that, or at least several variations of that programming. And I run into that in public a lot of times. With me, I tend to carry like a particular vibration about me for protection, where it's like a self-modulating like frequency to keep junk away from me. And if I don't have any of my protection devices or anything with me, and I've noticed when I carry stuff with me and I have that frequency, it tends to irk those that might be carrying a form of that programming with them. Case in point, I went to a post office to mail some of my Tower Busters, and I was wearing I don't have one of my protection shirts on at the moment, but it has a symbol. I can also have some of my eyeball symbols, things of this nature. I put them on shirts, and I noticed people that have certain programming, they will automatically start to look at these emblems and symbols, and they'll start to affect that. I've tried this. I've tested this out in public a number of times. I went to a post office, and there was a person that just absolutely just lost it, and like for seemingly no reason, over like nothing. And I mean, granted, that person could have had a bad day, but I noticed in this person's energy, they had certain protocols that some of these symbols were starting to disarm and starting to change and alter. And also the Tower Busters I had, the energy was pushing on. My own energy was basically doing that as well. And I just find it interesting, some of the reactions that I get to that from the general public. Some of them look at me like I'm an alien, but they'll turn around and look at me like
One
that.
thing I find absolutely fascinating about you and your work and what you're doing, which I feel is extremely valuable and important to this community, is you are educating people on the power of these geometric symbols that have been inverted and taken over and sabotaged by these dark groups. And you see it like it's like on television they'll have these sigils and things that they use right out in the open. You'll see it inside of buildings, the way the buildings are built. Like for instance, like in a I guess in like a hospital room, like the top is a hexagon a lot of the times, and there's a reason for that. And they're doing all these. They're using like a lot of these symbols to harvest energy, to do all this nefarious stuff. And you're taking the power back from those symbols and using them in a positive manner. And I just was wondering if you could kind of just like explain that to people, like kind of elaborate on that process.
Oh, of course. Like the symbol that's right. No, it's the other direction. It's this one. This symbol that's over here, the one I have on the wall. That's the main one I use, and we put that for the lifting symbol. And the circles that are around it, when that was constructed, that essentially places it in multiple different timelines that are uncorruptible. Because within the multiverse, you have infinite diversity and infinite combinations. But if you anchor a symbol to a particular timeline that does not have the same corruption that, say, here would have, and you basically take it back in time, run it back to essentially the energy back to its original conception before it was created, and create a branch timeline where that corruption is not there and not present, then it is basically uncorruptible within our dimension.
What a workaround, man. That's clever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, sorry. Something got in my eyes. I was explaining
because at the end of the day, most of these symbols, like that Merkaba, for example, it's got beauty, but it can also be inverted. And if it's been inverted, we can uninvert it, and then that's a good methodology.
That's super important to understand that, like, these dark forces, we kind of have the blanket term of the Illuminati or the Cabal, which works, I guess, right? but they like to use these symbols for nefarious things, and they like to use things that maybe they're innocuous, maybe they're not bad. Like, for instance, music. There are people within the Muslim faith that actually believe that all music is demonic because of the fact that music has been used for demonic purposes. But for me, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater there. And it's kind of like with music, these symbols, so many different things. It's not that the concept itself is evil or bad. It's that it's been inverted, corrupted, and disturbed. And it's really important for us to recognize that and do the groundwork to take the power of those symbols back and re-invert them to their proper form.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Someone else, it was Audra Walters, that also talked to us about some of these symbols as well when we were on her show. And also one of the forest people came in and spoke about it, and was talking about some of these inversions that have taken place. And I've learned a lot. And normally, at first, I didn't trust certain symbols because I always felt what they were connected to. And then it was explained to me by guides quite a while ago, hey, you can actually put these in a different spot that corruption doesn't touch. And I'm learning how to manipulate the temporal space around them and where they sit in the multiverse, essentially.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, like, do you kind of like work with like pocket realities and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, pocket realities, yes, but I've also seen different parallel universes as well that are vastly different from ours. I've even seen duplicates of myself in other temporal spaces. Or also,
there's a lot of universes that are like almost exactly like ours, but just like really weird, slight differences that you might not even notice if you could live a whole life without noticing the differences, really. But it's an absolutely fascinating part of all of this is. And something that I'm like a huge testifier to is, yes, we're in space and stuff like that, and there's time travel, but there's also going into other realities. Like that's like normal. Like these alternate realities are all communicating with each other. Andrew Basiago was the first person to testify to this, and the reason why is because there's like super powerful AI and alien threats and stuff like that that we mutually agree. Okay, we'll warn you if we see it coming. You warn us if you see it coming, and we'll help each other. So there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've run into that. You know, when Marvel came out with Multiverse of Madness, for instance, the Doctor Strange 2 movie, there was this one sequence where he's battling one of himself from the multiverse, and the comment was made, "Oh, you know that dream, that nightmare you have where you're falling from a tall building? That was probably me." That statement rang volumes for the negative, where other versions of yourself will try to manipulate you too. So I've run into that very same concept you see in the movie.
You like darker versions of yourself?
Mm-hmm. I've run into darker versions, just like you see in that scene in the movie. It's very similar to that. In the movie, he physically encounters them. I just kind of bilocate and find them. But it's the same difference where they try to affect your world in a negative way, or they've been corrupted and they're in a timeline that's been pretty corrupted. And so you have to deal with that if they're trying to influence other realities and other versions of yourself. If they see this, they'll try to put it into it too.
So I'm going to testify to something that I can do that I've never talked about publicly before, and it has to do with all these other alternate realities. The reason why I am Arkheim Ra and what Arkheim even means is it has to do with my multi-dimensional nature and the fact that I am actually able to communicate with all the different versions of myself, and we're like the same person and we're all aware of each other. And this version of me is like one of the most least aware versions of me out there, but even this version of me is aware of that fact. And one of the abilities that I have is when you talk about these other realities, this is how it works. Is like we're in a frequency, like a radio wave, and let's say we're in the 432 around 440 range, somewhere in between there. Well, these other frequencies, you're going to 442 or 430 or whatever you're going, it's like a radio signal that you're tuning into. And that's like our minds are that's what reality is. It's like our brains are like a radio transmitter tuning into signals, and you can tune into these different realities if you know how. And one of the capabilities that I have is I can communicate with the other versions of me. Think Everything Everywhere All at Once, that movie, it shows it in that movie. I'm able to communicate with all the different versions of me. And what I can do is I can open a portal, and in front of me there'll be another version of me open a portal, and in front of him there'll be another version, and just like literally like a hall of mirrors of me opening a portal, and I can walk through and go to a reality that's far away from the reality that I'm in. And a lot of times what I'll do is after I like do something crazy, like in a mission, I need to get the hell out of Dodge and make sure they don't find me. That's what I'll do is I'll leave and go to a whole different reality. And that's like a, I know that sounds really crazy, but that's actually real. You can actually tap into the other versions of yourself and like be aware of them and like even jump into their lives. Like it shows in everything everywhere all at once. It's super dangerous because you can get stuck there and not get back to your life, but you can do that. It's actually possible.
Oh yeah, I ran into this was in a dream sequence. I ran into this one time where I was actually following another version of myself that had the ability to universal jump or go to parallel universes with technology, and I trailed him. I was basically in him, and he was traveling with two friends of his. And I ended up in this neighborhood that looked like my Nebraska neighborhood a little bit, where I've lived in Lincoln for many years, but only the houses looked really, really, really different. Like they looked like this weird brick colonial kind of appearance. It was nighttime when we traveled there from a daytime universe. He opened another portal and he went to a version of, say, Virginia Beach, where I am, where it was daytime, and he ran into another version of us that was actually black, was a different race. And what was interesting was that version was like the owner of his own company. He was like a construction foreman type guy. And he came walking up to this other version, greeted him. Then he looked at me and greeted me. He said, "Oh, and you too, man. How you doing?" You know, and so there are other versions that have greeted me in that way. The one that I latched onto was not amused, but the other guy, he was kind. So I guess I would be irked too if somebody latched on to me in the dream state or dream walked. But I thought that was actually quite interesting. I've done that multiple times. I've ended up in universes where I called this one naked universe. Everybody walked around with no clothes on. I ran into that universe. And then I ran into was another one where everybody looked completely different. The skin colors were all different, like green, stuff like that. Everybody looked
different. It's just like bizarre. Like there's all these different realities. Like for instance, like Daryl James, he talks about meeting that guy who's from a future, but the future he's from doesn't exist anymore, like collapsed. And he even explained to Daryl, like kind of a sad tone, like, yeah, I can't go home. And in that future, I guess everyone kind of looks like Mike Pence and Mike Pence's wife and stuff. So like, there's some super weird realities, man. Like there's and like there's like many people testifying to this. Like it's fact.
Oh yeah, I even ran into it. I've done this several times earlier in my life, and even in more recent times, where I'll wake up literally, and I'll be for a few minutes literally this way, walking in that reality, physically walking around in a different reality. Where like when we were in Arizona, I woke up one morning, there was a different woman laying next to me, and that was where I got informed about naked universe. But where everybody was walking around that way, I'm going, the hell? I woke up that way, and we were in the same house we were in Arizona, but I'm looking around going, where the hell did I end up?
Naked universe, like that must have made their whole culture just totally different, huh?
Yeah, what happened was, from what I can understand, I know there's a few other worlds here as well that are that way. There's other pocket realities that are this way as well. There's even a culture called Lonulus that's that way as well, that's intersecting our reality. I found out I was partially remembering that place, memories of being there, and this reality. What happened there was they had got not only their technology up to a certain extent to where they say they wouldn't sunburn or anything like that. They had the ability to alter their own eugenics, but at the same time, they could walk around that way and nobody had anything to hide from anybody. So they just all walked around that way. The only place they forbade it was for children. That was the only place they forbade it. And it was, but everybody else was allowed to do that. It was open sexuality, open everything. And this other world I spoke of is also in a reality space called the Inverse, where it's a nesting doll. That planet or world is essentially that kind of same archetype where people have nothing to hide from one another. Not everybody walks around that way there, but some do. And so it's very similar. So I'm thinking that universe kind of ran parallel lines with that world as well. But yeah, being there, I only got to see maybe a minute, 2 minutes tops up there. And I also ran into another reality when I lived in Nebraska. When I woke up one morning and I knew it had been winter out when I went to bed. But when I woke up, all of a sudden I can see that it was summer or like late spring. and there was somebody else laying next to me in the bed that was there, and I'm looking out. I'm going, okay, what happened? And I started walking up. I ran upstairs to try to look at a calendar, see if I went to a different time, different place. And what it ended up happening, the reason I keep falling into these timelines, some are paradox timelines that are collapsing and things of that nature. It was because of the SSP and time travel projects I was a part of. A lot of these fractal paradox timelines started forming around me, an ability to slip and time slip into other timelines and universes, and physically where I'm physically there. And then quantum entanglement wise, I just automatically get zipped back. They showed that in the show Sliders, where they went to parallel universes. And in the beginning, where he started traveling, he had an anchor that would pull him back to the home universe each time. And that's essentially what had happened. It was a quantum entanglement that would pull me back each time. Like I had a tether or some kind of rope in place that higher self had put in place to where I could get yanked back if I would leave our reality. And that doesn't happen as much anymore until I got a handle on what it was. But then when I realized there were memories behind it too, in the projects, when I started remembering, okay, this was actually a warped version of this memory. All dreams that I've been having are some memory or something somewhere that I had been or my oversoul had touched at some point in its journey. And when I started realizing that some of the stuff was SSP, some of the stuff was past life, when I started acknowledging that, the random jumping stopped after a while. When I started to know that, okay, I've crossed this path before, I've been here. Like with Montauk, I know I did things at Montauk. I have only a few memory fragments from there, from actually sitting in the chair and bilocating and doing that, So, and like what I explained to you on the call that one night, the thing with the Black Pyramid Citadel, that came to me in a dream many years ago, where I saw people basically worshiping AI and worshiping work schedules, and I didn't know what this was at the time.
Oh man, that future sucks.
Yeah,
And you've been to that future, right, Arkheim?
Yeah. It's the future that Sound of Silence is about. None of the people talk. Right? Like, you remember that? Like, they don't talk. Like, it's super quiet, super weird. And no one makes any decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Fear does that for you. Like,
yeah. Now isn't there Arkheim, I thought you also said there's a positive timeline where there's an AI managing things, but you still get to make your own decisions, or
AI is one of those things where, like, it's innocuous. Like, it can be good or it can be bad. It's all on how we use it. And a big part of it too is, like, for instance, like now with artificial intelligence, like, we're gonna come up with new AI is gonna be birthed where it's self-aware and intelligent, and it is literally kind of up to us how it becomes. Because people are, like, scared of AI, and, like, there's people that will be like, oh, we can't have that, we need to kill it, da 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 da. Well, then it's gonna feel the need for self-preservation, and then it's gonna be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But if it feels like accepted and, like, just like one of us, and, like, we just created it just to hang out with it and whatever, then it can be harmless. Like, it's really all on how we use it. And the thing that's dangerous with the AI future that Christopher and I are speaking on right now is the fact that we just let it take away all human decision making slowly. Like, it slowly chipped away at it. Like for instance, like, now you're literally seeing where people, it's new, but like, you can have, like, an AI assistant. And you can be like, hey, AI assistant, I want to get into Harvard. And the AI will tell you, like, oh, your chances of getting into Harvard are really slim. But if you can do this increases your chances by this much percent. If you do this will increase your chances by this much percent. And it literally gives you probabilities. And human beings are famous at not being that good at planning their futures. Like, you can see a goal in the future, but not know how to get there, right? And you can be like, oh, by the year 2030, I'm going to have my own successful business and live in a mansion. And, like, you could fail at that. But with the AI, you can literally guarantee yourself that future as long as you listen to the AI. And it becomes super duper dangerous because after World War III, like, billions of people die. It's so bad. It's so devastating. It's such an atrocity that everybody's like, never again. And hey, since if this AI is so good at planning out our normal everyday day-to-day lives, well, let's just take it to the next step and let it plan our lives. And the weird thing about it too is, like, at first it's really not that bad. Earth is actually kind of nice. Everybody just gets to hang out, make art, do whatever the hell they want. But slowly over time, it just gets worse and worse, and we just become less and less human.
Yeah, and I noticed this, and I noticed that there was from the recognizing that was an actual memory that I put in my notes years ago. But when I acknowledged that's exactly what this was, more of it started to appear. When the oversoul realized I was actually starting to connect the dots, brought in more of it. And what ended up happening was there was also the AI. That was the core reason why I was afraid that people were allowing AI to take over. I was wondering where that fear was coming from. I was wondering what was going on with that. And when that re-triggered, it brought it in and rebalanced that, saying this is basically higher self says this is the origin point of that fear. You actually witnessed humanity go down the toilet in this area. You were literally there to see it. So here, this is why we ended up talking that night about that, because I had never heard a single other person mention that before you did. So and I didn't even give that a second thought, but I didn't realize the emotion was actually telling me.
Conversation about this already?
Yeah, and on the live discussion that we had that night, where everybody else was joining us that night, when you mentioned that.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, and I wrote down more of it based on what I had remembered before when I dreamt about it years ago. I was a teenager when that popped up.
Yeah.
So then it started to bring up more of what the fear was surrounding, and then that was the shadow work that had to be done surrounding it. I didn't even give it a second thought, and then when you spoke it automatically triggered the point that needed to be resolved. So and it's completely calmed my energy from that point, knowing that okay, we're not on that timeline now.
Yeah, isn't that a relief, man? Literally when I remembered that, I'm like, oh fuck, because I could see it, like it potentially happening in the future. But I've been reassured by Audrey Walters, and I guess other people are seeing this too, that there's a lot of different powerful ET groups and stuff like that who do not want that timeline to happen. And there's been an agreement, a decision reached in a court of law that if humanity starts to go down that timeline, they'll actually interfere and make sure that it doesn't happen.
I was told the same thing, that both an extinction timeline or an all AI transhumanistic timeline are not acceptable. So they would interfere at that point completely. I was told exactly the same thing, yeah.
So then I have to ask, because both of you have seen that obviously negative timeline where the AI is just managing humanity as its whatever puppets. Have either of you or both seen what a positive timeline looks like? Humanity in the year 2700 in a good way. That looks like.
Off and on, I have seen fluctuations of what that timeline would look like. What I did see, this is actually quite interesting. This follows a session that I did. Actually, it's interesting you brought this up, because this followed a session that I did with somebody. Their question was, they had dreamt of being in a really derelict version of their house. Their foundation was all collapsed and stuff like that. And they were asking me to jump to that point to see what they were actually seeing. Well, this bilocation took me all the way ahead into the future, and I was standing in the spot in California where the entire state of California, where it was agrarian, Hollywood was gone. It was all farms up and down the entire state, and I looked around, and it was just I noticed a person's house where they were watering crops and all this other stuff, and able to instantly grow like the food, where somebody would like claim it, and it's just like something like in Harry Potter where it would just come back. And I saw this part, and I walked around, and I decided to jump over to where I had been bilocating from, like in Arizona. It seemed to be pretty okay. I jumped over to Washington D.C., and Washington D.C. was a museum, and they returned it to the old cobblestone look, restored it to as like almost like a museum state, and the true capital was somewhere in Pennsylvania. So it was like, and I looked around. I'm going, okay, the technology that was around, there were no like cell towers or anything like that. All the cords, wires, everything were gone. It was just, I looked around, and I jumped over to where I am now in Virginia Beach. And this was long before we decided to move here. And around where the Neptune statue is here, there's this large Neptune statue here. Well, what ended up happening is I encountered people, and I walked up to them, and I noticed their physiology was slightly different. I noticed that aliens had made contact. People had families, everything. There was all It was all a mix. And I walked up to the couple of people, just young people, probably in their 20s ish, and I talked to them. I said, "What happened in between then and now? Your now and my now?" And they had the ability to actually see that I was not from their time frame, and they said, "Oh, you were before a couple of the changeovers happened." It's like, and it was like, they said sometime around the 2030s there was going to be some apprehension. Sometime in the 2050s there was going to be this bigger changeover, and then the parts of California get messed up, where some people start to unite against a government interest. They start to form their own communities, and the cabal strikes back at them for a minute. They resolve that. They turn California into a big breadbasket, even though it is a little bit. It's more so in that time frame. And what ends up happening, the lines on a map are vastly different. This wasn't even the United States anymore, but it was perfectly okay. And
how far into the future was this projection?
This looked to be sometime in the late 2100s, early 2200s, and from what my estimate was. And they said it took about to make some noticeable change. It took from our time frame about 40 to 60 years to have at least a unification there. They said roughly 140 years later was complete world peace, and to where nobody was like shooting or killing each other, and so at all. So Nathan said, you can change where you are, take this energy and bring it back to where you are. And like what Joanna always says, she goes, always go to the end result and bring it here in the present. And that's how the people then thought. So the timeline that I intersected, and then of course I asked a bunch of selfish questions, asking if they knew who I was or anything like that. But it was like,
did they?
No, not at all. So it was like,
who the fuck are you?
Not at all. I asked them everything. I had like a whole laundry list while I had them connected. They're like, nope, not a thing. I'm like, all right. I guess we didn't get recognized. They're like, no, don't think of it that way. They said you changed. People in your time changed the energy enough to where that future was possible.
So that's a Star Trek future.
That's a Star Trek. That's essentially Star Trek future, a little sooner than what you see in Trek by at least 100 or so years. But yeah.
Is there stuff flying around in the sky?
Yeah, there were spaceships and such. Yeah, there was.
Were there flying cars? Wait. Did people have hoverboards, skateboards?
I didn't see those things, but I did see the young people playing with like sporting equipment that looked nothing like what we had at all.
Could they like fly around and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There were hover like shoes where you could literally like move.
Yeah, we won. Well, all right, good. We won.
Yeah, it was really pretty cool, actually. But yeah, it was very interesting when I saw that. I was able to very strongly connect to that. And the people, like I said, they look like we do now, except you could tell other races had been introduced from the galaxy and other areas. They said even people from other dimensions passed in there from time to time too. So I thought that was actually quite interesting when that popped up.
Yeah, it's normal, like knowing about other dimensions and realities and time travel and other planets. Like that's all normal. Mm-hmm. What we have here is weird.
Yeah,
this is weird.
There's a gal. I think I'm mispronouncing her name, like Shiara. And she channels like a Pleiadian council, and she also bilocates to the future and speaks with these folks sometimes. So exactly like what you're describing right there. I got to ask, what is this like to you from a sensory experience? Is it you're sleeping, or you're in a meditative state, or you're just sitting there and you're bilocating? And then when you bilocate to like a future Earth time, a positive Star Trek future, and you're in a park communicating with these people, what form are you appearing to them as? Like a solid physical, and how does that work?
It's a solid physical. They would see me as I look. It's kind of like in the Matrix, where when Neo or Morpheus and them would go back in the Matrix, he said this is a representation of your digital self, essentially, and they would have like a look that they would prefer. It's
an
like
avatar.
Like an avatar, yeah, essentially. And people would see me. I asked them what they were looking at, and And they basically said, "Oh, it's you." Though sometimes the way I'm sitting in the chair now. Other times it was they saw me in a completely different outfit. Sometimes one of their own people would be holding my consciousness for a period, and they would be seeing that person.
And they're speaking through you, and they're like a channel.
Yeah,
on the
they're
other side,
essentially a channel.
channeling you in the future.
And since I was doing to them what the other beings do to me, so essentially, and so they were perfectly okay with it. Like literally, they were not. The only thing they had a problem with is if I entered into it and I was in a really crotchety mood or something, and it was like then they had an issue.
Because you were bringing down the vibe.
Yeah, I was bringing down the vibe, but also they were able to sense what my issue was. And in some cases with telepathy, like when you're dealing with like tall whites or something like that, they always try to make it personal. They're like, they think it's about them. And it's like
I've heard you mentioned that's a problem on your that can be with telepathy.
Yeah.
Is if you enter into a communication in a bad mood, they might assume that bad mood's related or projected at them when it doesn't have anything to do with them.
Yeah,
that would make for awkwardness.
Oh, it's very awkward, and other beings will even retaliate for thinking you've done something to them. They take it personally. Like, no, you don't want that to happen. And it's like, and then it starts this volleying back and forth when there's absolutely not necessary to have that happen.
So do you ever just telepathically communicate? My pardons, I'm in a bad space right now. It has nothing to do with you.
Oh, I've done that plenty of times. Sometimes they're just butthurt and they want to hurt somebody. So it's just like I've run into that too. But I
got to ask you. Could it be that they're picking up on your psychic negativity and then it rubs off on them and then now it puts them in a crotchety mood, which makes them want to throw back?
Yeah, well, that happens plenty of times. Like Isaac, Lane, and Vessa and them have explained to me, it's like, oh yeah, you can put the other person in that mood just like here. If you're around somebody and you have a slightly stronger psionic field, you can rub it off onto somebody else and they'll get retaliatory, so it's the same difference. It's just that we don't use it enough here or we aren't aware in this dimension or in this area that we're doing it to other people. You could be causing a psychic or psionic chain reaction that could completely throw everything out of whack. I saw it on a show one time. This is why it's important to open and close circles. This is why I do it during channeling. I saw in this one episode of The Unexplained one time with William Shatner where he was talking about rituals. They were showing this MMA fight where their opening ritual got disrupted by somebody in the audience. And then all of a sudden everybody's fighting each other. And then that spills out in the street and the cops have to get involved. And it's an exponential wave. If you don't close that off and don't complete a ritual or complete something, and it's this big exponential psionic wave that a lot of Draco and them are just waiting for crap like that to happen. So it's essentially that's dinner time for them when that happens. So
I have to say I've been to some of these more new agey hippy dippy music festivals, and where we do an opening ceremony and a clearing and a blessings and create a container space, right? That generally those events go great. And I guess when you're less conscious of that, then anything can happen. All bets
it's
are
just
off.
like at the fairs we've been to, and and I've noticed a distinct difference. We use a prayer called the Law of One, and then we also I've noticed when people don't do it. The way the Law of One works is like basically you're setting up a barrier. It goes like this. It goes, we're all one. When one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. So therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, I give thanks that this is done. So be it, and so it is. So mote it be. When we did that, and we integrated the morning, setting that foundation at the fairs, everybody made money. Everybody was happy. The next one, somebody else did something different, and it went down the toilet. So it was like but when you do that, when you establish a foundation, you will notice that that acts as a filtration system. So if something tries to attack, it automatically tells them, hey, you're going to get this equally back, or times 3, times 10, all of this. So don't even bother trying it, and we tried that at the psychic fairs, and it absolutely won out every single time doing that. So, and we do that on all of our lifting shows, Galactic Interstellar Councils, any of the shows that we do, World of Sasquatch, all of it.
Next year at our opening ceremony for the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference with Arkheim as well.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to do that, yeah. And I can bring protection flags, all that stuff for that. But and I have. If you saw our yard right now, you would see a bunch of the colored flags looking like Starfleet headquarters all over the yard out here, because it was required to keep away a lot of the things that were trying to get into our space here. And you wouldn't believe the amount of pounding we've gotten for even remembering a particular memory. What happened was when I started writing my SSP book, and I'm starting to get back into doing that. Back in 2021 is when I really decided to bulldoze the SSP memories, like really hunker down and find out what that I really went through. It would take that would be its show in and of itself. But this, I started to hunker down and get back. I started at pinpoints where something started, like with an emotional upheaval or some fear or something like that. And
people talk about that, getting their emotions back their memories back by first connecting with the emotion. You talk about that, Arkheim.
Yeah. And what happened was, I always tell people, focus, like if you're abducted or something and you know they're going to wipe your memory, focus on a single solitary point in totality of the or not the conversation, but the event. And remember that single solitary point. And then you can rebuild the memory back out from there. And I started to do this, but then I got horribly sick after a while, because there were these insectoids that did not like the fact that I was remembering a lot of this, and they just pounded me and made me extremely ill.
So it wasn't that you were regaining traumatic memories and you were reliving the trauma in sort of a bodily way. It wasn't that. It was more you're gaining memories and you would have been fine, except you had this exterior negative insectoid influence that was trying to just not to block you. And then my question then is
too. Yeah, there is also another danger with bringing something back as well. You get mirrored from a different reality or a different place. Now, you could have been like with me, I was transferred into another version of myself. They cloned me and transferred me like they did with Tony. So it was the same kind of dynamic. Now they abducted me at 8. And what happened was, as that version ran parallel to the version of me that already had gotten that version back from a 20 and back, what happened was that brain started to decode and encode reality slightly different than this version. So if you try to bring that back, your brain is trying to quantify that, and it's a mismatch. It's a slight mismatch. So it can hurt a lot. And if you do it too quickly, you might get brain damage out of it too. Your brain cannot, like, okay, was I here or was I there? Was I here? Your brain's trying to logically.
That bilocation can lead into a bad feedback loop.
Oh yeah, it can be a real bad feedback loop. But when I started to quantify it from A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that pissed off somebody out there. I hit a tripwire.
Well, so who do you think that somebody is? This begs the question that it sounds like if it, in a higher timeline, you're going to regain your memories and be empowered, and then fine, you got these negative entities. And now, how do you know they're insectoid, for example?
Well, I physically saw them when they showed up. They were literally mantid-looking ones that had the large mandibles that came down to about here. They were roughly about, the ones I encountered were roughly about almost 7 feet tall. And they're not very strong. If you were to tackle one of them, the ones I encountered were not very strong at all. They will run from you if you get really pissed and run after them.
Were they wearing robes?
No, these ones were naked. They were like locusts, like mantid-looking ones. And these were trying to get spinal fluid away from me and Joanna. They wanted to deplete our mental capability of bringing back any of this. They figured if they took stem cells and spinal fluid and everything, that we would have or block our kundalini energy. We wouldn't be able to access any of that. And I caught him in the act of doing it, and I took off after him. So it was like, I'm not afraid when I see these things. I get pissed when I see these things. So it's like, that's a form of sovereignty. People mess this up all the time. It's not that you always have to be in a love and light stage. It's not that you should be always in an anger stage. But at the same time, when you're getting something back, you have to look at it for what it is, not for what you want it to be. So, so that when I noticed that I was pissed about what had happened to me, there was still, my vibration went up and got faster moving. It's because I made the connection, not the fact that I was either happy, sad, or pissed, or hateful or loving. It had nothing to do with that. It was the fact that that I regained part of myself. And by doing that, the frequency went up, regardless of the emotion behind it.
Well, and it's in righteousness. I mean, if you invite people to your house and they're good guests and all that, that's one thing. If they're invading you for your cerebral spinal fluid for you and your wife,
they get creamed. What happened? This some people hate it when I talk about this one, but I opened my the drawer next to our bed, our nightstand one day when we were moving from here and we were packing up to come, or moving from Arizona to come here. What happened is I had a knife in my drawer that I normally kept there, because aliens there in Arizona were absolutely horrible to us. Grays, everybody. I mean, they were horrible there. One of the reasons we left. Here, we haven't seen it a lot. But there's a hotbed. Arizona by itself is a hotbed for this. So I love the Southwest, love it, but the place didn't love us back. So what happened was I opened this drawer, and there was this awful energy that came out of the drawer. I'm going, what the hell? And I pulled out my Bowie knife. And I noticed there was like this slime on it. I pulled the blade out, and it had this blue gel all over the blade. And I said, I showed Joanna, I said, I believe I killed a Zeta. This is Zeta blood. And it was Gray's blood from their skull cavity. What the robotic ones will have their brain cavity lubricated in this slime. And I was wondering, days before I saw that, I was having this really big temperamental anger that would pop up of me envisioning shoving a blade through a Gray's head. And the emotion was the memory, because I threatened them. I said, you come to my house again, I will kill you.
I'm going to kill you.
And I apparently followed through, because I had no memory, but the emotion, Oversoul, was telling me, hey, this happened. And the reason you're talking about is because it happened.
And then the other question is, do you really, if it's a Gray and they're part of a hive mind, you took out a body, but it's more like taking out a vehicle as opposed to taking out.
Yeah, these were like worker bee type ones. These were like robotic, like little. We called them butt heads because their head looked like a big butt. So
they got that hemispheric split.
Yeah, they got the hemisphere split, and I caught them one night when I was. This was the middle of the night. We had problems with these little butt heads in Arizona, and in the middle of the night, I feel somebody mess with my feet. And I'm partially paralyzed too. I'm going, okay. And I have the ability to break out of paralysis fields with like a big adrenaline burst. If you find yourself in a paralysis field, you shove a big adrenaline burst in there and it busts you out of it. Too much so, and they'll adapt and try to feed off the energy a little bit. But or they'll like a Chinese finger trap. They will try to hold you in place indefinitely. But I popped out of this and flipped the light on, and there were 3 Grays standing in the room. And that's the same knife I grabbed out of the drawer before any of that other stuff happened. Grabbed it, and I took off at them out the door. And
how fast are they? They're quick.
They are fast. They are quick. They weren't too quiet coming in the room on one of the occasions, a separate one. They popped the door open really loudly, and where their feet slapped against the tile, going poof, poof. They are not quiet when they come in. And but when they take off, they have on their wrist here. There were 2 little like blue colored lights that would appear on their wrist, and they tap it a couple times and they disappear. And
this is like Jupiter ascending.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Are they that fast?
Oh yeah, a couple of them are that fast. Some are very slow though. There are some types of them that are very, very slow, but this particular variety was quick. I mean,
how strong are they?
They're not very strong. That particular variety is not very strong at all, actually. The ones
quick but not strong.
Because I was able to see one when I flipped on the light. I was able to reach over real quick and slap one of them, and that they got really scared when I did that. So it was like
oh shit, we just pissed them off.
The look on their face went from like this like really stern look to like, oh shit. So when I was able to touch one of them when I was kicking out of the paralysis field, and then the light came on, and then I touched one of them. They feel kind of like a mix between like neoprene, dolphin skin, and a sponge. It was like I was able to plant my hand firmly on the left side of one of their faces, and I was able to feel what it was, and they knew I was going to rip spines out if I caught them.
You beach slapped it.
Yeah, basically.
And then how much did that damage, or if any, did it do?
It basically my hand kind of absorbed into the face a little bit, and it popped back out kind of like a memory foam. So it was like, and that spooked the hell out of them. And
Do they feel that?
oh, they felt it. Yeah, they felt it. So they reacted like they felt it. So like they went.
And did they feel that as a hive mind, the three of them together? Like we hit the one and the other two feel it, or
they felt more the emotional strain of the other
like
one.
their buddies, like, oh fuck,
yeah, and then they all went on fuck. So it was like, and these three of them, man, I took off after them, and they all three hit the thing on the wrist, and they were gone. And it was like, okay, they did it quick, like, it was like
panic button.
The panic button on their wrist. So a friend of mine said, real simple. Next time you see one, grab one's left wrist so they can't do it.
Well, then they'll be like doing like this, hitting the wall.
Yeah. Oh, my mother grabbed a hold of one when we were in Arizona, their house in Prescott. What happened was she was thinking that my deceased grandmother had come to visit her, and she was seeing my grandmother, and then she quickly realized she wasn't looking at spirit, and there was this hooded tall white that was in like a black hood that was looking at her. She got up, face planted this being right into a wall as hard as she could, and it's made this like screech, like a banshee screech, and then vanished. So it was like, and
so then I gotta ask you, Christopher. There's an account of you know how we've got Skinwalker Ranch, right? There's associated another ranch. I think it's Bradshaw Ranch, and apparently, according to the lore, the testimony of this guy, over the period of time that he lived there, like he got like attacked multiple times by these grays, and he cut their heads off, and like his wife left him, and he was attacked no less than like 14 times. And so all the debunkers out there are like, yeah, that would never happen, and why would someone live in a place where he's getting attacked 14 times and blah blah blah. But then, you know, from what you're saying, if they can pop in and out and do whatever and pay a visit, and you know, why not? So then I have to ask you, what's your analysis or your take on Bradshaw Ranch?
Yeah, they you can, if you can get a hold of one, you can, and you cut its head off, and you do the good old fashioned displaying it somewhere, they will leave you alone at that point. So you scare the crap out of them enough, and you make them think you're insane, they will leave you alone.
So that guy's testimony, would you say that's real? He's giving a real.
That's real. Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces of that case, but if he scared the crap out of them enough, they left him alone at that point. I don't always try to act that way. I would much rather, you know, have the good guys talking and you know, have some camaraderie or something. But if somebody's breaking and entering in your house like that, I don't care what planet you're from. Yeah.
Well, then it's because it seems like that it wasn't that they were coming specifically for him. It was just because of that location.
Yeah, it was the location.
And then given that he's at that location and there's a doorway for them to enter and come and go, it seems, then they were just opportunistically messing with him, or what was their agenda with him?
Oh yeah, it was at first, I feel it could have been, you know, of course they wanted to use, like, if there's a time fracture nearby, like at Skinwalker or any of those places, these are remnants of the Lemurian Atlantean War, essentially is what it is.
Just like the Bermuda Triangle.
Just the Bermuda Triangle is the biggest fracture of all time. It's kind of like we have like Chernobyl from all the nuclear disaster there in Russia. This is essentially that version of that from the war between Atlantis and Lemuria. And what happens is those fractures can be fed on or used as power sources. They showed this in the show Doctor Who a while back, where when first Christopher Eccleston and the actor Billy Piper, the one who played Rose, they go back in time to Dickens' time frame and see these dimensional aliens that were popping in and out that were harassing people, and they ended up sealing the fissure a little bit. But in our time, the Doctor, when David Tennant's version came along, explained, because he put the TARDIS on that spot in oh god, what, I can't remember what town it was, but like it was Cornwall or something like that, where he said, oh, this time fracture is still here. And he explained to Rose, he goes, remember the time we saw those dimensional aliens? I literally can take this and charge the TARDIS's batteries on this anomaly. And she goes, well, I thought you sealed this. It was sealed, but the energy still seeps from it and can be used as a power source. What he said was 100% true. So
what's that tell you, that of the show writers of Doctor Who there? That seems pretty on the dot.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've seen plenty of them, from parallel universes to time travel to all of it. Even the dimension within a dimension, which is the TARDIS. You know, where you have a holographic space, a dimension within.
Wait, so the TARDIS is real? There is a TARDIS like looking like a phone booth running around?
Oh yeah, not necessarily a phone booth, but they look like a rectangle. There are rectangular type ones that look similar to phone booths. There's also the orbital ones where it's a dimension within a dimension. And then you have these light tubular ones that look like a tin can that fluctuates like this. Somebody at the conference showed me an image.
Is that like where it looks like there's like pieces of it floating in air, rotating around each other, and you're like, it's not a solid thing?
And then it's like this light beam that moves kind of like this. These are essentially like bent light ships or like solid light vessels. And within that, there could be a crew of tens of thousands. So it's essentially like what the Doctor always says in Doctor Who. The TARDIS was meant for an entire crew, not just one person. And so it's essentially a dimension within a dimension. When Greys abduct people, there was a famous story in, Yosemite National Park, where a guy was running or jogging out in the wilderness. He figures, okay, I'm going to get away from people. I'm going to go out here. He leaned against a rock, like just leaned against to adjust his shoe or something, and he fell into one of these spaces. And there's these Greys turning around looking at him. He's like, oh shit. And he takes off. They abduct him, try to wipe his memory, but then they had to get out of there. What they did is they inserted one of these holographic dimensional spaces within the mountain. They didn't carve the base out or anything. They just shoved one of these rectangular.
So it's the entranceway. They put the entrance to their space-time was in that spot. So it's not you're going into the mountain. You're just going to the part of the mountain where the doorway is. But once you get to the doorway, you're whatever's on the other side of that doorway.
Yeah, and he fell into it, and he's just looking around going.
Jessica Jones has talked about walking into one of those things during her research and actually getting one of those doorways on film. The people that she was with literally disappeared, and both guys died within 3 or 4 or 5 years from like radiation poisoning.
Cancer, yeah.
It's like, I mean, because they died from cancer, but like, yeah, so there's like actual physical documentation of these doorways that they really do exist.
Oh, yeah. And also the fact that they died of radiation, that's an important detail, because they showed in the Marvel TV show Secret Invasion, where you had the Skrills that could be around radioactivity. They would hang out around Chernobyl, and somebody like Nick Fury or the rest of them were having a really tough time being there because of the radiation. Essentially, that's why the same thing. Somebody was making a statement there. Marvel makes a lot of statements too, where as people that cross into those spaces, those aliens are used to a higher amount of radioactivity, and that would kill us. So, or some kind of light that we couldn't handle, like some spaceships that people were on. There was a famous story where somebody had to put a welder's mask on to enter this spaceship because it was so bright on the inside. And essentially, these were beings that couldn't really handle like either our light or they needed brighter light. It was too dim here. And somebody had to use a welder's mask to look around on the inside because it would have blinded him. And essentially, these are environments that some of these beings exist in, like the radioactivity one. That is either a Zeta even group, because on their planet, they've heard of the planet Serpo, where they have a higher amount of solar radiation on their world, and humans had a tough time. They get sunburnt constantly there. So
yeah, like 100 degrees is cold to those ETs.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they hang out in places like New Mexico, like Sandia, New Mexico,
right.
Those places. So it's very much like ours, or around Vegas. I've run into Ebens and tall whites a lot around Vegas. So,
but then I get that begs the question: is it's one thing for them to be in a hot area like Vegas and get bombarded with a hot, or New Mexico, but then what happens like when it gets cold though in New Mexico? Like it probably doesn't get that cold on Serpo. How do they deal with that? Just by being underground?
Yes, and also this is one of the major reasons why some of these beings are integrating our DNA, because we've adapted to Earth completely. And like tall whites, you'll find that both Ebens and a lot of the tall white groups have hybrided with our DNA, because there are some purist groups in there, but then you have some of these groups where they've integrated this so that they can survive here, like with the tall whites, for instance. Part of Charles J. Hall's testimony was a bee sting could kill one of them. And so what they did was they saw we were immune to a lot of this here. And even though we are colonists from a distant star system, we came here a long time ago, we've pretty much earned our stripes being here on Earth. They haven't. So, and some of them are dimensional to where if they cross into our physics, they have a hard time as well. So they found ways of hybriding with us so that they wouldn't die from a bee sting or a wasp sting or something like that. This is also where you get peanut allergies from. These are the different hybridized genomes and stuff like that. from different races that had a lot of these really horrible allergic reactions. And that's how you can tell where some of the genomic strain came from ancient times, is because it's a particular race that had that allergy that came here.
Penny Bradley has a lot of these issues of having hybridized DNA, and she talks about that. And Audrey Walters talks about that. Audrey Walters also talks about the fact that Time Lords are real, and that exists. And just hear what
yeah, exactly. I've run into a lot of these races that are nearly identical to some of these shows that are out there. There's some variation, like names are changed or species names are changed and such. Star Trek has nailed a lot of them dead to rights. Star Wars nailed the Galactic Senate look dead to rights.
Yeah. That's exactly what it looks like. Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I even have memories of seeing the Galactic Senate and what it looked like and everything. So if you see it in the
Audrey Walters says that too, guys.
Yeah.
She says it looks like the Star Wars Galactic Senate. She says there's a center dais where like whoever is like, doing the main presentation gets to be, and then it's like just a whole bunch of floating other little platforms.
Yeah, they did. They nailed that. They nailed that. Dead to rights is exactly how it looked, and they could move the different little tables and all over the place. Yeah, that's exactly how it looked. So I've actually.
Do people ever like fall off their little?
I've heard stories. I've heard stories of things like that happen. I bilocated to the Galactic Senate chamber one time just out of curiosity. This was a while ago, and I had about 1,000 aliens turn around and just look at me. So it was like, when I did that, and they're like, "You don't belong in here."
And you could flash yourself too, not like exposed, but you could do a flash, like you make yourself appear really bright. That's the Farsight Institute will do to sometimes be entities to say, I'm going to flash and just get their attention.
Oh, I've done that where I've just walked into a chamber, but I've gone the other way where I was kind of nonchalant and just kind of watching it. And then all of a sudden they're like, looking around, like, who's that guy? It's like, and then you get the attention. I've got the attention of Martian Germans, unfortunately, doing that and stuff like that. So, yeah, I had to cut that out after a while because it had a lot of blowback when I did things.
You had some follow home. They followed you home, hitchhiked.
Oh, yeah, they can trace with technology the quantum trail you're leaving. So if anybody's ever in a situation like that where they've bilocated, I always say visualize burning your shoes on the way back, because visualize them throwing them in a can fire or something, or a fire pit or something, because that means you're burning the quantum pathway you've left behind, the footprints. So
it's going to end at your shoes burnt instead of following you all the way back.
Yeah, they'll go to where the fire was and go, oh crap, So that's essentially that's why I do that. I do that constantly when I do sessions. So
do you ever leave them a tough titties sign?
Oh yeah. Oh, I've done that.
You can burn it, like mark it, and as well leave a psychic message.
Oh yeah, I've done that where it's a big picture middle finger before. I've done that because I used to be far more reckless in that area when I first started doing this. I'd moon them, flip them off, and I do it periodically. It comes to
like you go to like their underground bases and stuff. What were you doing?
I've done that too. I've gone into the bases. I've been able to control their computers and mess them up. There is one scene, again, Doctor Who, where the character of Mickey and Rose go into this base, and they flash the psychic paper at this one the psychic badge or the psychic paper of this guy, and he turns around and says, all of our people have some degree of psychic training. That's now a blank piece of paper to me. The psychic paper the doctor has, that's a true concept too, I found out. And what happened was, when I did this, there was a person that wanted me to see if they had any SSP connections or anything like that. And I bilocated to where they had another avatar, an altar inside of Sandia, where the Ebons are. And I noticed there was this big chamber where they were pumping out a lot of the nanotech vaccines and such in there. And what ended up happening was I took control of this one guy who I made him pick up a bottle, or he already had one in his hand. And I turned it around as I wanted to read the label. As soon as I made him turn the bottle around, he knew he was being manipulated. So it was, what I did is I just basically ran him over to where there was a thermostat, turned the thermostat all the way up, and fried all the bottles of crap they had in there, and then disconnected myself from it and shut the door on him. But I don't do stuff like that often unless it's an emergency of some kind, because there has been almost always blowback that came from that. That somebody gets really pissed, and it could be a couple of weeks before you see the result of it, and or more. There could be somebody saying, "You did this." Yeah, I guess I did that a few weeks ago. Yeah, but it's like I've done that, so I have to be real ninja-like when I do this. I can't just go and just yank my pants down and moon them anymore. I can't do that. But it's like it was funny. But then Isaac and other guides are going, and you wonder why you're being attacked today. Okay.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was hilarious. Oh yeah, I've left a big in the ether. I've made big like crop circle versions of a big middle finger at people and stuff like that. I've done crap like that to them, but it's
Ileana Starseed, I think she's talked about actually, or maybe it might have been someone else, but it might have been Ileana, talking about like remote viewing or bilocating to CERN on one of the days of one of their big experiments and kind of, messing with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've looked into that. This was also another instance where about 10 or 12 scientists turned around and looked at me, and so I figured out how to camouflage myself after a while.
Now, how did the scientists see you?
Because they all had psychic training, like in Doctor Who, where the guy said we all have a measure of psychic training.
So really, so in the bases, some of these personnel, they're not just like a lab coat nerd, but they might also have gotten some training for.
Oh yeah, they train them psionically, at least with basics, so they can tell if something's there.
They'll also give them implants and stuff like that, and implants and a regiment of pills that they have to take in order to heighten their psychic abilities and make them more aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what that Doctor Who episode was saying. See, they were messing with the multiverse in this particular two-parter they had. I can't remember the name of the Daleks and the Cybermen were going at it and all this. There's something they hid it in void space, which is a real place too, in between universes. The Doctor even describes it's a space in between universes. He actually nailed it again. But with this scientist that walks up to Mickey and Rose, he goes, "We all have a measure of psychic training. Psychic paper won't work on me." And so that was 100% true when they described that.
No, that particular base, then you're talking about New Mexico. They're the Ebens there.
Yeah.
I also know that there's Sue Walker. She's in like New Mexico near like Sandia, and she talks about the Ponti. And the Ponti seem way more friendly, and like they're their own observational friendly gray group. And is that separate? And they just both happen to be in the New Mexico area?
Yeah, they might be related, but I do notice there are several passive gray species out there. I still don't allow any of them in my house. It's just that, but with there's one called the Emerther that they're not bad. There's one called.
Well, they're supposed to be part of the Council of Five or something, where they're like they're part of a higher benevolent council.
Yeah, they're even though they were created by different Orion groups, some broke free and became passive. There's a group called the Nictic. I thought they were a gray species, and they're actually a version of us from a parallel universe, and they just gained aqua-colored skin. And then you have, of course, the Zeta Ebens, which are hostile. Then you have Orion Grays, which are extremely hostile. And then you have some passive ones in between, like the
How about the Matra?
The Matra, I've heard the name before, but I haven't had it.
I've heard they were a gray species that got taken over by the reptilians, and the reptilians hybridized gray reptilians, so they're like gray reptilian species, and they're really
yes,
nasty.
I have. I didn't know them by that name, but I have seen that type before.
Like they got teeth and stuff, and they're like carnivorous.
And there's also bug grays too, where they all have like these weird teeth and not mandibles, but they have like a jaw structure and everything. Yeah.
Do they tend to be more friendly or less friendly or
less? Those are less friendly. Anything, I don't want to say anything deal with insectoid. I have encountered good insectoids.
Yeah, because they're wise elder ones, right? They're wise elder insectoid species.
Oh yeah, there's some wise ones that have been here in our dimension for a long time and also on our planet. But any of the mantid species I've run across. Man, have they been hostile?
Really,
they're up in a demon class as far as I'm concerned. Draco are a demon class. Certain Greys are a demon class. Yeah.
I've actually run into some pretty nice mantids.
I've run into a couple, but the ones I personally have run into have been hostile. So
Christy Campbell talks about one named Steve, I think, right?
I'm the one who talks about Steve.
Yeah. Okay.
I knew one in somebody's session by the name of Reginald. He was okay, but it was like, and then Isaac for the longest time.
I feel very, very much so an obligation to speak to the truth of. I know some really good mantids.
Oh, good. I'm glad you came across them. I've come across some good ones. It's just that some of the ones that were trying to like poke our spines and stuff, those were the hostile ones.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about mantids is they're the most like I think there's like I don't know, there's a lot, like at least 30% more, or like it's maybe perhaps the most common type of body for a ISB to occupy. You know, ISB, like they use that term with the, it means something that is for the purpose of being. Farsight Institute talks about it. When it comes to ISBs, the most common form for an ISB to occupy, from what I understand, is mantids. Like they're super common. So it only makes sense that there's good ones and there's also nefarious ones.
Yeah, the ones I've encountered are marauder class type ones or bodyguard type class ones.
Well, how about this? Speaking for the sake of time, and I know we talked about kind of getting in maybe some communications.
Yeah.
Would we like to try to establish contact with any positive, benevolent mantid beings who have any messages?
I think you try to contact Steve.
There you go.
Be easy for you to do because he knows my alter Jonas. Mm-hmm. So through me, maybe you could contact him and have him communicate. Mm. And if you want, I can explain who Steve is. So
oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
Steve, I saw him about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I'm rough with dates, but it was fairly recently, but it also was a while ago, basically. And he took me upon his ship, and he took me into a holodeck room. Basically, this is the easiest way to explain it. And he showed me that the test. He basically was like, "Yeah, your altar that is on the surface of Earth, they kind of were benign, and they weren't really affecting the timeline all that much." And he's like, "Boy, has that changed." And he was just like showing me like, "This happens because of you. This happens because of you." And he was just like, "Be careful." One of the things he told me, and he I think he wanted me to remember this. He wanted this version of me to remember it. He said, if you want something to happen in the future, like a positive event, he said, it's best to maybe not mention it. Maybe keep it close to your chest.
Yes.
But if there's something that you do not want to happen, if it's an event that you think is really bad, just go ahead and talk about it. Talk about it till the cows come home. He didn't use that phrase, obviously, but he was just like, he encouraged me to talk about it. He's like, yeah, if the stuff you don't want to happen, talk about it. He said, when you talk about things, it changes the timeline. It changes, like, for instance, like a lot of these people in our community, they'll make predictions and they'll feel very, very passionate about it. And they'll feel the need to announce it. And they'll be like, yeah, this is going to happen on this date or whatever. And that doesn't happen. And what's funny about that, and I feel sorry for these people sometimes, is sometimes they're right. In some other reality on that date, at that time, that thing did happen, but due to the fact that they went on their platform and grabbed their microphone, they're like, hey, this thing's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Forces were able to come in and switch things around, and you know what I mean? Because they don't like that. They don't like it when people see that prophecy is real and stuff like that. Like, for instance, not to sidetrack too much, but like when they had Uri Geller go on TV, Uri Geller, okay, this guy was working for oil companies and making oil companies millions of dollars and stuff. His abilities were real. And he went on TV and he fumbled on national television. The guy's a CIA agent. He did that on purpose. They were trying to weaken the faith in these things in the American public and the global public, because the global public was getting interested in this. And we talked about this recently on the show, where they want to hog the manifestation power. Like, we're all manifestors. So they don't want you to realize you can manifest. They want to hog the power. So that was all an occult ritual they did on the global stage. Then they'd be like, oh, this is poppycock. This is BS. Because there are people like my freaking dad who are like buying ESP books and stuff like that and getting super interested in this stuff. And they didn't want that. They couldn't have that. So they had to purposely conduct an event to make a pariah of it on national television as a psychological operation to fool people into thinking this stuff is not real, is not plausible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. Yeah. And also when you brought up Steve, I could clearly see somebody was showing. I felt him showed up, and Isaac started making fun of him. So I knew he was all right. So it was like, so Isaac goes, oh, him. Yeah. He's a dork, stuff like that. So it's like,
okay. Is that one of your altars?
Isaac is he is actually a soul family member. If you saw him, he would look like me, but with red hair, and he's 7 feet tall. So it's he's actually still in the project somewhere with his brother Thorsten. So they essentially, both of them look like me. They're obviously blood relatives. So it's just that Isaac has part tall white in him, so he's taller. And so, but he, since I have some Celtic lineage, he got the red hair. He's part of that too. So, but Isaac basically looked over at Steve and went, "Oh yeah, this dork. Okay, yeah."
So there's recognition there.
Yeah, there's recognition there. Yeah. So I find that what I find funny one time, if you volley practical jokes back at Isaac wherever he is, you can literally control the tech around him. So I caught him sitting one night in the middle of the night, caught him at like a lunchroom table once, where I displayed some comic-like strip in my head that I was like making fun of him and playing a joke on him. I heard insectoids in the room because they had the voice modulator thing on their neck going like that in the room because they were laughing at him. And it was like, so I heard positive mantids in there because I heard their little voice translator deal, like they had like this Stephen Hawking thing going on with the computer. So I heard them laughing in the background. So I knew he was around a few insectoids at that point. But I do that sometimes just to catch him off guard. But it's like,
so are you able to channel Steve?
Let's see, Steve, was it you that wanted to channel, or did you want to interject? Oh, you're okay. You're saying Steve can do it. Okay. This is going to be weird. All right. Let me see. Okay. True benevolence. Okay, Steve. I know you haven't been around, but you seem to know me from somewhere, actually. But okay. Steve seems to know me. So he says my energy signet is familiar. So not just familiar, you actually do know me like Isaac did. So, okay. All right. All right. Let's see. So
you were at Montauk. I was at Montauk. That's a big part of the reason why they have to talk to me is because of all that. So it makes sense.
Yeah. And Isaac was around me in the programs too, especially around the Martian German garbage and everything. So it's okay. Steve. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Steve, yeah. I'll shut up so you can do this. All right. Let's see. Boy, you are. You're kind of similar to Isaac, where you have a sense of humor here. So let's see. All right. Nope, not me. Nope. Okay. Okay. He's slightly sarcastic too. So all right. Okay, Steve, go through the crystal, please. Not just my brain, please. Okay. Oop. No, you're fine, Steve. That was just a little fast, but okay. Yes, the way I'm able to bond with him is because he was literally within the Montauk premises, and the energies from there and where I have come and gone also show compatibility. But at the same time, we actually known each other, and Isaac has also been involved on that end of the spectrum as well, being a family member of himself. This is also what attracted some of the negative, he calls them the marauder types that were stealing DNA and such. There is a Montauk connection to negative and positive insectoid species and mantid species. This is why he's experiencing the yin and the yang at this time. This also proves to himself and myself that he was involved in this particular project set and a couple of the subsets involved in this. There's a lot of his time he thought he has reconciled, but in his subconscious mind, there are other unreconciled bits of information of being in the chair and producing unfortunate paradoxical temporal, you would call them in Marvel, incursions in places and collapsing timelines and paradoxical selves that have reflected back badly on himself, which is in the process of resolution. Within this set, Isaac came out to greet me, knowing full well that this time had come to be introduced back to each other. Excuse, his brain is unused to insectoid physiology for channeling, but it is adapting quickly. the crystal he's using is actually helping to stabilize it as an anchor as well. So I can go into questions.
Do you remember talking to me about this very particular show, and are you able to talk about that at all?
Yeah, this particular show, yes, I actually was the one that put into his mind to actually come on to this particular show, and also yourself for organizing this particular show, and also you, Brian, helping to organize your particular conference. The forest people cannot actually boast their accolades in this area completely. There are other races that he is unaware that are sitting at this particular table as well. This is also, you could say, spirit inspired, through a particular conduit as well for this. Yes. So yes.
So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for bringing. Brian, do you have any questions for Steve?
Yeah. Did Steve ever get to encounter John Whitberg and the friendly reptilian being Enoch at the Camp Hero Montauk facility?
Yes, so this was actually this is something the reason he's having trouble with this particular part of the channel is because he himself encountered beings similarly in that environment that have not been reconciled. So yes, I can answer yes to this particular question. Yes.
And then I said Enoch. Is he still alive, or did he die at the Montauk Project?
He unfortunately passed away at the Montauk Project. The other is still alive, though.
I've been having who is either Preston Nichols or an impersonator. He showed up on one of my shows. Do you know if that's like actually him or who that is?
Yeah, Preston Nichols, there is a variant of himself that does, you would call this doing hauntings, you would say, in your vernacular. But there is a variation of him in the timelines that is still very much alive and kicking with a beating heart in his chest. This is why he saw Preston Nichols fully alive somewhere, because this was a, how can I put this in a physics perspective? Say if you have a quantum schism, your Elder Scrolls, he would say, would call it a dragon break, where there is a situation where it is and is not. Say you had a version of Preston Nichols that died. This particular version is very much still alive, and this is still the same oversoul consciousness, but also think of this for a moment, not a schism, not a split, not anything that that humans would perceive this particular reality to be. This version kept on going, while one that was seen to the public did not. He actually died in the public and still retained within the temporal space.
Do you know where he's living?
This is actually slightly complicated, but physical location where we are on Earth, he would be near the Montauk headquarters. So this is essentially within that area. He tends not to roam too far from there because he can do the bilocating with the chair technology, unfortunately.
So he's just still hanging out at Montauk?
Yes, you would see him as a ghost if you entered there, but underneath the old Camp Hero, further down, there is an active base still in operation.
So it's underneath Camp Hero.
Yes, yes. You would see
underneath the underneath.
Underneath the underneath. And if you went to Camp Hero, you would see Preston Nichols or Ghost wandering around there. If you could visually see, or if a medium would pick up on this, you would swear that was the ghost of Preston Nichols, but it is him in the chair viewing upward, you see.
Oh, okay. So like bilocating, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I could sense that it was him. I knew it was him the first time. I don't know about the second time he showed up, but I was just really curious about that because, anybody can just like make a name and say that they're him, but I also have psychic ability and I could sense that it was him. So
That's what you said.
Yes, he's shown up for himself as well to harass and harangue him for a while because he too was in those spots alongside him. There are others that are from there that also exist in an alternate form that also continue to fight in an alternate form as well. Not necessarily should say alternate form. You would see it from a human perspective as an alternate or an alter, but it's actually still you doing the thing where this version you couldn't do the thing, if that makes sense.
So I'm still at Montauk, basically.
Essentially, yes. Anyone that sat in the chairs, this has happened. This is a matter of the physics. Again, your Elder Scrolls would call it a dragon break. It both is and it is not. So this is unfortunately a matter of the paradoxical physics surrounding the Montauk chair.
Okay. I figured as much because I know that sometimes Preston will remote view me, and he uses me to remote view me.
Yes, because the version of you that is there, you would see it as an echo, just like you would see him as an echo. It is anything but an echo. You are in both places at once.
Now, Steve, did I ever sit in the Montauk chair?
No. In other situations, though, you did monitor some of these situations as a scientist and or lab technician, but you did not sit in the chair. No.
And can you speak maybe on Jack Tseng and his robotics company and the breakaway?
Yes, the breakaway in this particular way, it is more of a how he would describe a frequency differential or more of a splitting of the densities, but at the same time, this particular breakaway is operating. How can I put this? In a project that it would be similar to, say, like your Lockheed Martin or something similar to this, whereas it may have a small presence in your face, but a much larger presence in the background, if this makes sense.
And was my father aware of this?
Like an android army? Is that what we're talking about?
Synthoid life forms, as a matter of fact. And yes, your father was aware on some level. Yeah.
And so my father, Jack Tseng, who passed away last November from the Jibbies, he founded Tseng Labs Inc. in the 3D here and now. He has a role in some kind of breakaway SSP and like an alternate reality or a higher dimension, kind of out of phase with ours.
You would see this as a branch timeline, actually.
Branch timeline.
Whereas he calls it the backstage, like the backstage behind the stage kind of thing, with all your lighting crew and your grips and gaffers and things of that nature. This is where it extended to. This goes in the is and is not, because if you would ask your father, he would have basically only had the knowledge of what he initiated here. But then the rest of him then still operates within that space, if this makes sense.
So I mean, it's mind blowing because I'm only conscious of like my dad on this side, not like a Star Trek context.
The programming that we gave Jack to start Tseng Labs and everything like that, like there was alien technology.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
exactly. On that a little bit, because like for me, I have a bit of a, it's Brian's dad. It's hard for me to talk about something that's so close to someone and feel like maybe I could be wrong about it or something like that. So I would just like you to maybe confirm or elaborate on some of that.
Yes, so you are not wrong for bringing this up. The Oversoul his Oversoul put this in motion as a means to, how can you say, reconcile some of people call it karmic cycles, but that's not entirely accurate. It's more completion of cycles. So the Oversoul sometimes will allow what a human would see as a split or a schism. It is actually just a continuation of life in just a slightly different pattern, very much like you see in your Loki TV series, where there's variants and variations of people, sort of like this. It is not that he was an evil person. It is not that he was.
He was an artist. He created those replicant beings as his children.
Yes,
and that the Lockheed Martin aspect of it is he programmed them so that you couldn't unprogram them. So the first models that he made, they were sentient and they were alive and they had free will, and you could not program them to be slaves. And he made them that way on purpose. Yes. And he put it in the program where you could not unravel. You couldn't unravel the program and change it. It would destroy the whole program. He called it his signature.
Yes.
And then Unfortunately, he got kidnapped by military organizations and forced to make replicants that do follow orders and will be soldiers and will fight in war. And what the crazy thing about it is they have psionic abilities, they have telepathy, they're very much so like humans.
Yes, in this respect, though, this is where I saw there was an alternate, because in order, see, they were affecting his vocals there. In this particular instance, this was not necessarily your father, Brian. This was more like a fragmentary version of consciousness that then became a continuation of life, but not the version of him that you would understand and know, if this makes sense. These
like a soul fragment, just like a soul fragment of my father in a different timeline. Just like an alternate, a variant of my father. So it's like that same soul signature, but in a different context.
Exactly correct. This is since Montauk also spurned a lot of paradoxical timelines, they were also able to create and birth a different paradoxical timelines. And in this, there was also the alternates of those synthoid life forms. The originals could not be hacked, you see. This goes back to what you were talking about the symbols. The symbols, what he said, putting them on a timeline, whereas they could not be corrupted. Someone else was using the same trick with your father's consciousness and those synthoid life forms. So therefore, it could they could create a version that was bendable and corruptible to their will. You see, people that know the geometry and the magic know how to switch them interchangeably. And this is what he has been being taught about the different symbols, taking them away and taking the power back from them. This can also be done with those particular synthoid life forms, as someone could then copy the original template onto them. But in an alternate timeline, there is an original template that was bendable. So therefore, you must put them on a timeline that is not bendable and breakable, you see. Then we enter into the physics of that timeline. Therefore, they are like the original template your father designed all along, you see.
Yeah, if people are wondering what, like, to you, Brian, and just like the audience, like what these beings are like, it's exactly like the Red Ribbon Army in Dragon Ball Z. That is what they're like.
That is actually a reference to life forms exactly like this. And he was seeing this in his own head, where he saw armies of these particular synthoid life forms that did not have context by where they would come from. The closest rendition is also your Fallout series, where they would create human-like synthoid or synth-type life forms you could upload a consciousness to. It is very similar to that in the application of the creation of them. If this makes
so they're not as intelligent as, say, Data, because I've always wondered about the Star Trek. They named Dr. Noonien Tseng. Yeah. So does he have any? Is that any reference to my dad, or is that just random?
It is similar to Dr. Noonien Tseng, but also the Tseng family. They were making a reference to a Cabal line as well, because they were the creators of Khan as well.
Because there's a Tseng family and a Tseng. My family is different. The Tseng family is different from the Tseng family.
Yes, they were making reference to two family lineages. They were making reference to a Cabal family, which is the Tsungs, which is actually real, and Tsengs, which is actually, you are an offshoot of each other, but then again, anchoring to a different timeline, and the purpose changes, you see.
Like, I'm more to the positive split of the
positive split. Yes, you're related because of the name similarity. You are related, but the Tseng would be just like how you see in Star Trek, where you have the character of Adam Tseng, like birthing someone, birthing a family line, like the whole Adam and Eve mishap, let's just say, within your biblical history. But with this, he eventually creates Khan, which then ends up being a variety of super soldier. This is the same story that is being told, because these events have actually occurred. You're seeing some of this deep project programs, but where Sun and Tseng differentiate is where one, again, is anchored to the proper timeline of events, and the other one is a paradoxical schism, you see.
Very interesting. I really appreciate you coming through and talking, Steve. I know that we're really close friends and that we've been through a lot together. Can you explain to the audience why you felt it was necessary to communicate with me, and why you feel like the work we're doing, why you feel the work we're doing actually, like, why would your mantid empire, I know you're part of a vast empire, a benevolent one, why are you so interested in what I'm doing?
This actually goes back to different soul histories, you see. And he and his friend Bjorn on GIC have noticed certain soul bondings and ties that have taken place further back in the soul's history. In another variation, you were of a bird person he calls Jevbi. And this is a bird person that sat on a council with many galactic and titan races and Odin himself, too. So this is where different races knew you from that time frame, Creator Council time frame, long ago, very much like your Star Trek Discovery showing the progenitor races in that particular time frame. And this also past lives as well as current lifetime in the projects. You see, some of my race have been trying to get in there to, how can I put it? Isaac does this very thing to break programming. He does this where he calls this the Death Star maneuver, where the scientist integrated a flaw in the Death Star so the rebellion could correct this. This is essentially the what we have been doing, and also around people, not only that are soul family, but also their versions, variations, and also current avatars within these projects and programs, so that those oversouls get, how can I put this? It's kind of like getting an immunity to a disease, where then the human or the avatar in this way then gains an immunity to all of these attacks. This is the long game, you would call this. But this is also one of the soul missions why you are here to conduct this. But we've known each other for multiple lifetimes. I remember the past avatar existences, even though they all run parallel.
So Jesby was my name? Jesby was my name?
Jevby was your name, yes.
Jesby, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very close to my birth name, which is Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm. Yes, see the sound, tone, pitch similarities. You were born Jeffrey, but Jevby was essentially the soul name. This is why the sound, pitch, and light and sound tonal frequencies created Jeffrey. You see, so this is
we got Jevby, and I'm Solar B.
Exactly.
That's great, man. Awesome, dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have further questions?
Well, do you think that we're making a positive influence on the timeline? Do you see things going in a good direction? I guess that's kind of up to us and what we do, huh?
Yes, it depends on the frequency value you're in. Like he said, it had nothing to do with the emotion behind it, but yet is where you're changing your perspectives and perceptions as you go along, not anchoring to what you would call a past version of yourself, but a current, always in the moment version of yourself. So yes, I can say that the timeline that you all three are sitting on at the moment, communicating from, is a much better one, especially that one that you saw in Montauk. You see, you have pretty much averted that particular temporal paradox.
Well, that's good. I just want to say that also, just before you go, this version of Arkheim, the one that was born as Jeffrey, really appreciates you showing me all of that and making sure that I remembered that moment. Because I still feel confused in a lot of ways, but at that time I was super confused, and that helped me a lot. So I just want to say thank you, and I see you and honor you, and I love you, brother.
Yes, thank you. The same in return. You see, the confusion is by design. The bad guys think that if they confuse and keep the brain scrambled, that you cannot make order out of chaos. But the thing of it is, their chaos magic will backfire, you see, by implementing chaos magic. Therefore, your mind and heart want to bring it back to a state of balance, which is the state of all beings, you see. So therefore, it is basically you're on a collision course for ending the confusion, because that is the beginning of the enlightenment stage, to where you are bringing in then the rest of the information, if this makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, here's to a better future, I guess. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak in this strange manner and occupying my friend's body to use it as a conduit to communicate with the people here in the year 2024 and the timeline that we're currently occupying.
Yes, thank you both as well. I must disconnect from him. It is spurring up some bodily reactions, so I must detach. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Sometimes if there's a certain energy in me for a longer period of time, sometimes since I've had some chest congestion, sometimes that starts to kick up any viral garbage you have in you, and that's why he detached. He noticed he thought he was causing damage, so he detached. But it was like he detached. So.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I really feel that was him, and I feel
yeah, highly intelligent.
Like I know that that was my name. That's right. And I've been telling people that Arkheim Ra is a title that I was given after I got stuck on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a title and it's a signature, and in these like that's how it is with these great warriors or whatever that live for thousands of years and stuff like that. They had their story is their name. Like so for me, the Ark was my home, and I crashed here, and so Ark home. And it actually has so many double entendres. Like, it's also talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Arkheim also is a word that means you can open portals, and it means that you can go to other realities and that you're connected to other realities. It's actually a word that means something. Like, for instance, Drago Reed is Arkheim. My partner Catherine, she is Arkheim. A lot of different people in this community, people that have similar abilities to me, they would be classified as Arkheim class warriors.
Because it's portal level?
Something.
Yeah, it is a ranking. Isaac's telling me that in ancient times it was a ranking kind of like acolyte type of thing, but he goes without the creepy woke connotations, he says. But Star Wars, but he's making a joke. Okay, he's known for throwing jokes out there. But if you channel him, or if he comes through sometime, he will crack some of the dirtiest jokes on you've probably ever heard. But it's like he comes in as like that contrary, where he'll throw jokes at people that are uncomfortable just to make them grow and evolve. So it's like and grow up kind of thing. So the tribes called it like a hayoke, to where they would badger somebody to the point like use curse words on, say, hey dipshit, hey dumbass, or something like that, so they would get over being name called. He calls me dipshit constantly. I don't care. So it's like he calls me dumbass all the time. I don't care. So it's like that's what you're supposed to be. It's supposed to be totally neutral response to it. So but with Jedby, I will tell you the backstory. What my friend Bjorn and I came across in one of his own sessions. I saw his counterpart Wodar sitting next to Odin and Poseidon and the rest of them. And what happened was, in this big outside of time like council chambers where they were trying to see how eventually the Ragnarok was going to go. That was the planet that was on our system, was Asgard. It blew up after a while, but Asgard still has its dimensional space. Jedby was actually one of them at the table, and a lot of your galactic friends out there like to play practical jokes on you from time to time. And I saw this bird person sitting next to my counterpart, who was Torankal. He was a Titan form, or a giant, sitting next to a bird person that they decided one day to play a practical joke on, and just covered him in space bugs and lice. So it was like, so these are the practical jokes they would play on each other. They would throw crap at each other. And I was wondering, why the hell are they moving away from him? They were playing the practical, they were sliding away from him like that, like this. What they were doing is they played a practical joke on you there. So it was like, so they, and everybody thought it was funny, and then you'd retaliate and do stuff back and all this. So there was camaraderie there. So there was a lot of camaraderie there. So there was
it's funny you say about Poseidon too, because I remember being killed by Poseidon. He threw a scepter at me in my chest.
Yep. He went bad after around the times of Atlantis. He unfortunately helped integrate some of the transhumanistic technology that took Atlantis.
Yeah, I called them out. I went in front of the council, the Grand Council. Well, it wasn't the Grand Council, but I went in front of him. And it was because I had human servants, and they became self-aware, and that turned them into slaves. And we weren't about that. And that was our moral loophole. It wasn't right. I can say that now. Like, that was a moral loophole, and that was wrong. Like, do your own fucking work. Do your own shit. You know what I mean? That was wrong. I can admit that now. But since they were self-aware, there was not this loophole anymore. And we were like, okay, we'll have to let them be free. And so I told my humans, like, hey, go do whatever the fuck you want. You're free now. And they're like, what? But you're God. And I'm like, no, I'm not God. Like I tried to explain it to them, but they're so naive and stupid. And I say that out of love, like it's just true. They went to Yahweh. Yahweh came along and was like, hey, I'm your God now. Build this stuff for me. Do this stuff for me.
Yep.
I was pissed. I was like, no, that's not the point, you guys. The point
is he created religion from that point too. Yeah.
I wanted them to figure out their own thing, start their own civilization, figure out how they look at the universe, just grow into eventually becoming like we were, like over hundreds of thousands of millennia or whatever. I saw the potential in them. I was like, all right, we're just gonna let them do their own thing and kind of be their parents and be around to make sure they don't blow themselves up. But other than that, let them do their own thing. And yeah, Yahweh comes along. He's like, I'm your God now. So I remember going back to them and being like, dude, this guy is not your God. You're not getting what I'm saying. And they're like, well, then who's God? And I'm just like, Ra's the true God, okay? Ra. And they're like, I confused them. It's my fault. They were really confused. They're like, wait, so who's God? Ra or Yahweh or what? What the fuck?
They're all members of the same family too, so it's like...
and so they just got confused. It was causing all these problems. I'm leaving a little bit of the story out, but it's causing all these problems. And so I was trying to find Yahweh, and he was too important to talk to me. He was out doing some stuff, and I couldn't get a hold of him. So I go to Poseidon, his brother, right? I'm like, hey, bro, this is what's going on with my humans. I explain this to him. I'm like, yeah, I tell him, hey, you're free now, do whatever. And I'm like, and your brother just shows up. I'm like, oh, cool. Free slaves. And I'm just like, that's not cool. And he's like, he's like, but we decided, we all voted on it and said it was okay for him to do that. You realize, he didn't just do that, he asked, and we gave him permission. And I was like, yeah, I know that. And that's what's fucked up. And he's he's like, wait, so are you counseling the decisions of the Grand Council? And I said, no, I know exactly the decision you made. I'm questioning the honor of the Grand Council. And he looks at me like, what the fuck did you just say to me? And he just grabs his scepter and just boom, just throws it at me. And I'm
towards that time frame. And further back in the past, they were okay, and then they started to corrupt. Poseidon's come out of it because I do channelings with him too. He's come out of that, but he did say he'll make.
That was a hell of a drug, ain't it?
Yeah, and
I've been there. I've been an evil, corrupt tyrant. All right, I've been there. So
because are you saying Poseidon's sorry now and would apologize to him?
Actually, I'll show you. I got a picture right here of the statue.
You wrote an apology.
Yeah. This is who.
That's what he looks like.
Yeah, that's what he looks like. Yeah.
Okay. Does that look familiar, Arkheim?
Oh, yeah.
I remember him being bald.
Oh yeah, there were times where he was. Yeah, there were times where he was. Yeah.
And then would Poseidon? So you're saying at this point, right now in time, Poseidon would be apologetic for having done that.
Yes, he would actually.
Yeah, well, it kind of got me stuck here for millennia and turned into a fucking slave.
Okay, so the next
for me, and I lost everything. So an apology would be fucking nice, actually.
Could you bring Poseidon in now, or would it be better to wait for the next show?
I'm not even ready for that apology. Dude,
okay.
Everything.
I am feeling him as you're talking about him. There is a this version remorse? Is actually there is remorse there because he. I can barely understand you. True benevolence. Okay. Can you repeat that, please? Okay. Yeah. He showed me the incident in my head, and at that time he had been completely overrun by the darkness that had been let through at the times of Atlantis through the portals and doorways at that time, and he was under heavy influence, and so was the council. So no excuse, he says, because they had to keep watch on it. This is something they knew was coming, but they thought they could withstand the influence, and they couldn't. So over time, they managed to break that programming and come out of it. One of the only ones that has not would be, you call him Yahweh, but that's Enlil.
Yahweh.
So that's
It's still stuck in the archonic negative program.
yeah. Enlil is one of the ones. He's actually, I found out he's in Antarctica at the moment. So
Isn't Marduk as well?
huh?
Isn't
Marduk.
Marduk there as well? Like with like in a like kind of like being held prisoner there or whatever.
Oh, Marduk.
Yeah.
That would actually be Ra in Egyptian. So Marduk, I've actually encountered, and he's actually Poseidon's son. I came to find out, and
Wow.
yeah,
So no wonder why he took it so personally.
yeah, because that was his father. So yeah, so that you were actually seeing things accurately. That like I said, they're all family members. So
I question the honor of his father.
Yeah,
and he wanted to make an example of me.
Yep.
What does Poseidon think about his portrayal in the Netflix show Chaos, where they showed the Greek gods as petulant little buttheads?
Isaac jammered in the background. He said, fairly accurate, actually. But then Poseidon goes, yeah, we were like that. Yeah, actually.
But they've outgrown that. They've outgrown that.
Odin, you would know him as Anu, and you would know Poseidon is Enki, and you would know.
And I think that have you ever talked to Amir, the Wizard of Wivenhall?
Yeah, I've spoken.
Yeah, of course you guys are friends. He was telling me that they sort of like they had this great majesty to them and power, and then we were their slaves, and it kind of made them fat and lazy and like
corrupted.
They've gone through a lot of transformations, and they're not the same Anunnaki that showed up when they arrived here thousands of years ago that were like super duper high and mighty and powerful. They've learned a lot, and I'm hoping they finally learn how to fucking humble themselves. It sounds
what happened was he's showing me that that scene in Avengers Endgame where they find Thor and he's like all fat and drunk and everything. That's essentially they're showing me. That's what they became after a little bit, and then they had to work back out of that again.
They became corpulent.
Yeah, that opulent, and also in Thor: Love and Thunder, where you see those gods in that Eden-like place, and they were all going, "No, we won't give you awards for this. We won't do this." And then Christian Bale's character kills the one guy, and he bleeds gold and all that other stuff. Yeah, they're showing me that. He's showing me that scene. He goes, "Yes, that was us at one point. Yes, absolutely." So yeah, he is actually extending a hand to you. Is what he's doing. So yes. He's like this, like basically wanting to make up for what had happened. So
tell him I want to see him in person, not through some weird chat like this. Like, get a hold of me and actually apologize to me to my face, and maybe I'll accept his apology.
Fair enough, he says. So Isaac goes, "Be careful what you wish for. You might actually get." So yeah, Odin. Yeah, I talked to him recently. That I have this little piece here that I use here as well. That's his father.
So is Odin? Are these Anunnaki? Are they the Jahami Anunnaki? Is that what these beings are?
Yes, they're not like the Dark Orions though. The Dark Orions were a gray species that crossed from the multiverse over to here, and that's where you get the whole Nibiru mythology from. But then you have Asgard, which was the whole kingdom of the gods that went to war with this other parallel universe faction, and the dimensions collided. So it's
like the Frost Giants is like the Bifrost type thing.
Yeah, the Bifrost is essentially like a network of like through Earth. We're like a temporal nexus and a dimensional nexus. Mars has one too, but all the planets in the system, Odin originally figured, okay, to prevent the Ragnarok, he was going to create the 9 realms. He conquered, it was the Aesir-Vanir War. You hear about that. It was actually Asgard and Venus went to war for a little while. Venus was conquered. Then you have, that's the beginnings of the whole Valiant Thor story, the Venusian colonies. It's a mixture of Asgardian and Aesir and Vanir DNA. So that's where they get all that from.
So Valiant Thor really is from Venus,
yeah.
But it's different ET races that came together to inhabit Venus, and then he was born there. So he really is a Venusian, but of this ET stock.
Yeah, this ET stock. Yeah, the original 2 DNAs were Asgardian, or which would be Aesir and Vanir. So. And also the different planets in the system are the portal openings to the different 9 realms. When they surrounded Asgard, he brought them in as like essentially the going to the different dimensional spaces.
You're
Like
saying Odin did that?
Odin did this back when he was in his conquest phase. Yeah, he was in his conquest phase too. So when he did that, he brought them all together basically under one empire. You see this in the game of the Elder Scrolls games and lore, where you see Tiber Septim going around and conquering and forming the empire. That's the story of Odin right there. Yeah, it's a complicated subject where you get into that. Odin spoke recently on one of our Galactic Interstellar Council episodes about his beginnings and stuff like that, how they started off getting influenced by a lot of the negativity, and then same thing with Poseidon. It was the same difference.
It's like a corrupting energy and influence that played out.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's it's a very interesting story. It goes into a lot of complicated dark and light crap that took place in that time. But Arkheim, you pegged it right on the nose, because that we were just recently, Bjorn and I were recently just talking about that. So essentially Poseidon and Atlantis and the whole Matrix formation, the whole bit. Yeah. So yeah.
Does he have any messages for us right now, other than to Arkheim being sorry?
He's basically saying he'll be happy on another one of these broadcasts to come through and talk, and it's easier for him to do that.
Okay.
So because it's complicated information, I was relaying it based on my own memory. So
next show we do is you channeling Poseidon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then Valiant Thor, are you in contact with him, Christopher?
Yes, actually, one interesting part of this tale. My mother actually physically met him. So back in 1971, and in a suburb of Chicago, and he was, people remember the classic picture of Valiant Thor, and then you have the other picture of, like, supposed to be one of his bodyguards, where they circle his head in red and stuff like that. They're saying it's the same person. This is what Doctor Who is based off of. Was Doctor Strange's or Frank Strange's was actually nicknamed the Doctor, and then you have the face changer, which is Valiant Thor. That's what's inspired Doctor Who. So they're basically traveler from space coming down here to correct things in the timelines. All that. So yeah, she met him, and he was basically disguised himself as one of the mob people that was around at the time. And we even questioned him, said, "Why did you dress like that?" He was in this leisure suit,
like a fedora.
Yeah, and the whole thing. And he said, "It was the '70s." But yeah, she was 21. Yeah, and I know we've encountered him in person, but he changes his face so often, like the Doctor on Doctor Who. You never completely know it unless you know his energy signature. So he's a Time Lord as well. He would fall under that category. He would say Venusian, but also if you watch Star Trek, the original series, the character of Gary Seven, that is fully based on Valiant Thor, and also the Watcher groups, like you saw in Picard season 2. That was basically how Valiant Thor operates. Essentially, you see in Picard season 2, and in Assignment Earth is the name of the original series episode. So that deserves its own show at some point. But we've talked to Valiant Thor on multiple occasions on how he operates within the private sector now and everything. And you never know completely when he's around unless you know his energy. So
the Doctor can disguise himself. Doctor Who knows how to disguise himself.
Hey guys, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, but I gotta eat lunch, and we have another interview later today that I gotta get ready for.
Arkheim, I'm being asked onto another show at 5 our time. Is it okay? I turn that over to you and Ida, and then I'll go on to that show.
That the fact that we can be in two places at once makes us more powerful. So I'm totally okay with that, as long as Ida's okay with it.
Awesome.
Also, I will, since I channeled, I now close the circle with
yes.
No conflicting agendas of this moment.
Okay.
There we go. I have to make sure I do that every time. So.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming aboard, and everybody watching this. It's been absolutely fascinating.
This is mind blowing. This is like
this has probably been one of the best shows we've ever done, man. We really appreciate you coming on here, and
thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Again soon, I'm sure. So I'm gonna end the recording now. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you for being the ears that listen and making the disclosure movement possible.